So super excited to get this kicked off and start talking about the new launch of the new program, when it's coming out, what it's going to look like. Disclaimer, I know very little, but I know enough to know how to guide you. So I don't want you to misunderstand. I have a lot of people that I know in a lot of high places. And in talking with those people, I get a lot of good information about what we think is going to happen, the things that are being talked about, and that's a lot of what I'm going to share with you today. If you are a consumer thinking about taking advantage of the program, this is perfect for you. If you're a real estate agent who is wanting to help your clients take advantage of the program, this is perfect for you. So we're going to dive in and we're going to cover a lot of really good information about what the first version of the program looked like, a reminder of how the program worked, some thoughts I have about what's going to happen with the next version, and kind of what you need to do to be prepared. So specifically, I'm going to talk about what is California Dream for All. So what is the program? What did it mean the first time around? What were the rules? Then we'll talk about when is it coming back and what are the things that I'm hearing that they're talking about regarding changes they're going to make to the program. And then I want to talk about what do you need to do to get prepared for the next release? What are the steps that you have to take to make sure that you don't miss out on this next release when it comes around? And then finally, I'm going to talk about, should I wait for the next release or should I just buy now? And then we'll have time for some Q&A. We're doing Q&A the whole time. So if you have any questions, feel free to post your question into chat. If you're watching live on Zoom chat, I'll watch the chat in the Zoom and I will respond to those accordingly. If you're watching on recording, I'm posting this onto both of my YouTube channels. If you're watching this recorded, or if somebody shared this with you, post a comment and I'll get back to those soon and happily answer any questions that you have. So for the record, this is being recorded on July 31st, 2023. So that gives some context as you might watch this in the future. New information will come out regularly. Pay attention to my YouTube channel for changes. I've got a website for this as well. So it's californiadreamforall.info, which is down in the bottom right corner of the video screen. All right, so let's dive in. What is California Dream for All? It's a shared appreciation loan. Now, everything I'm talking about right now is based on what the original version was. And there's some things that I think are going to be changing, but I'm not talking about those changes yet. So first of all, it is a shared appreciation loan. And that means that you are getting 20%, up to 20% of the purchase price of your home from the state of California as a loan. And you will pay back that loan at some point in the future. And I'll talk about what the points are in the future, but essentially when you sell, when you refinance, or in 30 years when you pay off your primary loan, the state will get their money back. It's one of the questions I had a lot during the first release was people saying, John, what if I just kept the house for 30 years? I never sold, I never refinanced. That way I don't have to pay back the state. The state's going to get their money back and they're going to get it back with the appreciation. So you're sharing in the appreciation of the home. So what does that really mean? Well, let's talk about how shared appreciation works. What you want to look at, let me get my handy dandy little pointer out here. Come on, little pointer, where are you? There you are. Okay, so you buy a home and it's a $500,000 home. You get 80% of the purchase price you borrow from me. And then the other 20% you get as a loan from the state of California. That covers your down payment. Now, you can also pay your closing costs if you want, and that we'll talk about down the road. I've got a lot of videos that went into a lot of detail on that stuff. I'm not going to repeat all of that tonight. But 5 years later, let's pretend the house goes up from $500,000 to $640,000. So you've got $140,000 in appreciation. What the state says is, hey, we invested into 20% of the price of your home. And so we want 20% of the appreciation plus the money that we had originally loaned to you. Okay, so that means that when we go back here, we say, hey, the homeowner's share of that $140,000, 80% of it belongs to the homeowner. They made $112,000. You made $112,000. Now the house went up by $140,000. The other $28,000 goes into the Dream for All program. So you're paying back $128,000 when you sell the home. But remember, you sold it for $640,000. Your balance was $400,000, and 5 years later, your balance has gone down to $370,000. So yes, you have to pay back the state the $128,000, but you only owe 370, you still get your you get back $142,000, which is basically $30,000 that you've paid down on your mortgage and the $112,000 that you have gained in appreciation on the home. The other big benefit of being a homeowner is you get a tax write-off. So you get a huge tax write-off that you don't get as a renter, and this program gives you the ability to bridge the gap from being a renter to how do I become a homeowner when I can't come up with a down payment, I can't afford the monthly payment at today's interest rates. That's the biggest challenge that's causing people to want to use this program, is they just can't afford to pay the monthly payment it takes to buy at today's prices with today's rates. This basically has you only making payments on 80% of the purchase price. You can buy a $500,000 home and have a payment as if it was a $400,000 home, okay? And then what'll happen is when you sell that home, the state takes that money back and they recycle it to somebody else down the road. So this money will be self-fulfilling. It'll keep pouring more money back into the program. That's not going to help us right now, though, because it ran out of money really, really quick. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So there's 3 times when you have to pay this back, 3 moments you have to pay it back. The first one's when you sell the home. So if you have not yet paid back for one of the other 2 reasons, then when you sell the home, they figure out, hey, what's the sales price of the home? And then the owner, you pay all of the closing costs and real estate fees. So the state gets 20% of the sales price, even though you're paying commissions and closing costs on that full sales price. The state doesn't participate, doesn't share in the closing costs. So it's a negative on your side, but hey, they're giving you essentially, you don't have to make a monthly payment on 20% of the price of your home. In return, they just get the equity on that 20% and you're paying the closing costs. So when you sell, you have to pay it back. When you refinance, although the first version, I think the second version is going to be the same. The first version allowed you to refinance once without triggering the payback. So you could buy a home, buy it. The average rate in April when we started this, when this started and ended, the average rate was around 6.1 to 6.5%. So for those people who bought homes back then, 6 months ago, when interest rates fall to 5%, they have an option. They can refinance and they can pay back the appreciation. Therefore, they no longer continue sharing money with the state, or they can say, you know what, I'm going to refinance and I'm going to continue owing the state because I don't want to include that in my loan amount. And then when the rates fall to 4% and they refinance a second time, they have to repay the money. Now that means that your payment's not going to be as low because now you're making payments on the full price, but your interest rate has dropped. So maybe you trade off, hey, I've got a 5% rate at this monthly payment, and I can go down to a 4% rate and keep the same monthly payment, but I no longer have a partner in the state. I've washed my hands of them and paid them off. So that's the benefit of refinancing. You get a lower interest rate, but sometimes you're not going to have the benefit of a lower payment because you have to include the money that you've borrowed from the state, either the first time as an option or the second time you refi. It's mandatory. Now, if you do a cash out refinance, you must pay the state back. So even if it's your first refinance, if it's cash out, you have to pay the state back. And CalHFA will order their own appraisal to determine the value at that time. But the other thing that people don't understand is you have to pay the state back in 30 years, even if you've never refinanced or refinanced only once, and you obviously didn't sell the home, you still owe them back the money in 30 years. At that point, CalHFA will order their own appraisal. You'll write them a check. Now you probably need to borrow money, so you're going to take out another loan. You're going to contact me in 30 years or one of my 3 kids who's going to take over my business. And you're going to get a new loan for the money you owe the state. Now the state, you have to write them a check for the original loan amount or pay them off through a refinance, plus the appreciation. Now there's a limit of how much the state will charge, and it's 2.5 times the original balance. So in the scenario that we said, that's the interest they'll charge. So in the scenario in the beginning where we talked about a $500,000 purchase price with $100,000 from the state, That means the state can get up to $250,000 in appreciation plus the $100,000 that you originally borrowed. So you might have to pay them back as much as $350,000, which is why you do not want to wait until the end of 30 years to pay them back. That becomes super, super expensive, even if you had to refinance and not save any money per month, but lower rate equals being able to pay off the state and not raise your payment. That's worth it because you don't have to worry about paying them back in 30 years. Yeah, that is an ouch. So that's something to be aware of, Anna, is the state's going to get their money no matter what. Think about if your uncle had said, hey, I'll give you 20% for the price of the home as help with the down payment. But when you sell the house, you got to pay me back. And well, look, I paid for that portion of the house. I want the appreciation on that portion. What you got to remember, Anna, is in 30 years, the house is worth a lot more than it is today. The average appreciation is about 5% per year. That means that you're going to see a significant amount of increase. Simple math, which is not accurate math, but simple math says we're going to see 150% or 1.5 times increase in the value of the home. So that $500,000 home will be worth $1.25 million in 30 years based on that simple math. That's not accurate math because each year the value compounds. But simple math says, hey, 30 years, 5% average, you're going to see that $500,000 home worth $1.25 million. And if this program was the only way you could buy a home, I certainly would rather have a $1.25 million home that I owe the state $350,000 than to never have purchased at all. So that's really a big deal to understand that there's a huge benefit here. There's also lots of negatives to be aware of and go in eyes wide open. So is it a good idea? Well, let's go through it. First of all, you're only making payments on 80% of the purchase price. So if you said, I only qualify for a $500,000 home. Well, guess what? Now you can actually qualify for a $600,000+ home. You can buy a higher priced home with the same monthly payment you were already planning on making. So it allows you to stretch your purchase price. Now that's kind of scary. And I'll talk in a couple of minutes about what happened the first time around and how people overpaid for homes. And I'm afraid it's going to happen on the next release. And it's because of this exact point that people say, hey, John, it's not my money anyway. It is your money because you're paying it back to the state. So you're borrowing the money and you have to pay it back. It is your money. It's just not your money you're making payments on today. Really, really important to understand that because I don't want you paying way more on the price of the home without at least understanding that it is your money. Now, you might have to pay more on the price of the home. We'll talk about that in a minute. It does offset the problem, affordability problem. We have a major affordability problem in the United States right now. Interest rates are really high and house prices are really high. Now, I don't see house prices coming back down because there's a shortage of homes for sale compared to the number of people that want to buy them. How did that happen? Well, it happened because of the Great Recession in 2007. And you had a bunch of builders who said, I'm not building anymore, which was fine because a bunch of homeowners said, I don't want to own a home. My aunt lost their home in foreclosure. I don't want to be one of them. And so nobody was buying and nobody was building and everybody was happy. And here we are 15 years later and everybody's buying and very few builders are building and they can't catch up the backlog. So there's not enough homes out there. So we're going to see prices continue to go up. Hopefully we see interest rates come down. But as soon as we see interest rates come down, we're going to see more buyers wanting to buy. This program back in March proved to me there's a bunch of buyers waiting to buy. They just can't afford the monthly payment today because of inflation. Well, guess what? This program helps offset that issue. You have no mortgage insurance. You're putting 20% down. Therefore, when you buy that $500,000 home and you're putting only 3.5% down, you've got to pay mortgage insurance. You buy a $600,000 home, you actually only borrow $480,000 and you don't pay mortgage insurance because you put 20% down. It saves you money out of pocket. You are paying less money in monthly payment because you're not paying for mortgage insurance. That'll let you buy a better home. You can buy a bigger home than what your budget was requiring you to stick with. So it gives you more flexibility in your budget. and it allows you to have a lower monthly payment for the same priced home. So it gives you a lot of choices on how you use the money. And most importantly, it allows you to stop renting, because that's the challenge. The challenge is, how do I get from here to there? I know, being a homeowner, big picture is better. Now, there's more costs being a homeowner. When the heater breaks, you got to pay for it. When the roof leaks, you've got to pay for it. So there's certainly more risk. There's certainly more cost, but it makes you way more money in the long run, and it becomes cheaper monthly over time. Rent continues to go up. Mortgage payments historically go down because you have a guaranteed monthly payment that'll only go up a little bit because of property taxes and homeowners insurance. But over time, people refinance to lower their interest rate, and it brings down their monthly payments. So owning a home may have more risk and cost up front, but in the long run, it's significantly cheaper. As a matter of fact, I think that the fact that homeowners got such a good deal in 2020 and 2021 is a big reason why we have a bunch of inflation right now, because they have a lot of extra discretionary income. They don't have a high house payment. They're paying less for a house than you're paying in rent right now, because they bought the house 10 years ago. They bought it at a 7% interest rate, and they've refinanced, and now they're at 2.5. Now, do I see us getting back to 2.5? I don't. But are we going to be below 6.5 or 7? We are. So when you buy, you're locking in that payment now, and that payment will continue to go down over time. Now, so what's some of the negatives? You don't get as much money from the sale of the home. I don't know if that's really a negative, though, because you didn't have to make payments on the full price of the home. So you can't have the free lunch. You can't say, hey, I want you to pay for 20% of my home price, but I want all of it when I sell it. I deserve all of the appreciation. I deserve all of the equity. I deserve all of the growth. That's kind of like going to the bank and saying, hey, the day I deposited my money into the bank account, there was somebody next to me that deposited money into their bank account too. Can I have their interest as well? It was their money, not yours. This is the state's money, not yours. You're not making payments on it, so you don't deserve the appreciation on it. So you're not getting less money as a negative. You're simply paying what you are due to pay. Now you have to pay 100% of the cost of selling. That sucks. You've got a partner that paid for 20% of the price of the home, but they're not paying 20% of the closing costs when you buy. They're not paying 20% of the closing costs when you sell. And you can only refinance once without triggering a repayment. All right. So let's talk about some success stories. I want to talk a little bit about people who were able to become homeowners through this program. So the first one is actually, I want to tell you that I helped 9 families. Now, there was only 2,300 families in the entire states who got this program. The money was only available for 8 days. I had 45 pre-approved clients out writing offers. I had 9 of them that we ended up closing escrow. I had a 10th one who got his offer accepted the night before the money ran out. And by the time that we locked his loan, the money was gone. So there was one client that I had that didn't make it. I haven't met a loan officer yet that helped more than 9 families. So I pride myself in being a good source of knowledge in before the first, as you see in my YouTube, if you watched it all before the first release, I had a lot of advanced information and provided good knowledge. And now I've done more of these than pretty much anybody in the state, at least as far as I've checked around. So I'm really knowledgeable in how this program works, and I'm staying connected with the people that make decisions. And I want to be your resource to help you make this happen for you. So let's talk about some success stories. My first one, not the first one I closed, but 4 of them I want to talk about out of the 9. Helped a young family purchase a home in the San Francisco Bay Area. As a matter of fact, they bought a home in Pacifica. This home was $1.225 million. And we used the 20% to pay for their down payment and all of their closing costs, which means that they didn't have to pay any down payment. They didn't have to pay any closing costs. As a matter of fact, I refunded their appraisal fee that they paid up front. I refunded their earnest money deposit that they paid up front, and they got $97 paid down as their first monthly payment, towards their first monthly payment on the home. They literally got in with 0 money out of pocket and $97 paid towards their first monthly payment. It is possible when it's done correctly, but we have to make sure this was a very tightly managed process. And I made sure that we had all of the boxes checked, all of the numbers appropriate before we wrote the contract, made sure that we were on top of every piece to make sure. He literally bought a over $1 million home with nothing out of pocket. That is unheard of. I've been in this industry for 22 years. I've never, ever done anything like this. It's why I say by far, this is the best program I have ever seen when it comes to down payment assistance, the best program I have ever seen in my entire 22-year career. All right, let's talk about my second success story. This was a family in Stockton. They first-time home buyers, they honestly never thought homeownership was an option for them. They happened to meet with me a few weeks before this program came out and didn't even know the program was coming, but I shared it with them and I helped them understand the benefits of it. And it allowed them to stretch their budget because they were really concerned about how much their monthly payment was going to be. They wanted to make sure they had enough money to pay for the sports and the events that they were doing with their kids. And even though on paper it looked like they had enough income, they weren't willing to spend the monthly payment that it took to buy a house at $400,000. So when we were first talking, they said, John, we think we probably have to buy something around, $325 to $350. But as we looked online, we can't find anything good at that price range, anything that's worth living in. Now, depending on what market in, you're like, man, we can't find anything at $397. Well, this family in Stockton, Central California, found a wonderful home. It was $397,000. They used the 20% down to pay their down payment and all of their closing costs. Now, one of the things to be aware of is you have to pay for earnest money. And I didn't list the earnest money on the Pacifica property because it was $50,000. Most of you are not looking to buy a $1.25 million property. But this $397,000 property, they had an earnest money deposit of $7,840. And they were able to get back almost every penny of that. So they got at closing, we wrote them a check for $7,737. They only had $102 of their own money that they actually had to use to purchase a home. And they had a monthly payment on a $318,000. Actually, well, it was higher than that because we used the part of the down payment went towards closing costs. But they were making a monthly payment on probably about a $339,000 loan amount, which is the price range they thought they had to buy. But they got in with literally $102 out of pocket, and they were able to get a home at a higher price range to get them into the neighborhood they needed to get into. All right, two more stories. Here's a client that I helped buy a house in Los Angeles in Tujunga. $1.05 million purchase price. Again, he's borrowing $840,000. He paid his own closing costs, so took 20% from the state to borrow only $840,000, but he paid for his own closing costs. He decided that was smarter, and for probably out of my 9 clients, 4 of them paid their own closing costs, and 5 of them took money from the state to pay for the closing costs. So this was an example where he paid his own closing costs out of pocket. My last one was a unique one. So this was a guy who came to me saying, hey, John, so Crystal, I'll get to your question in just a second. Actually, let me look. If they utilize some of the funds to close costs, yes. So Crystal said, and I'll actually cover it right now. Crystal said if they utilize some of the funds for closing costs and they still had mortgage insurance, yes, they do, because you're borrowing more. They are borrowing more than 80% of the price of the home, but we use some of the assistance money to buy out of the closing costs. So buy out of the mortgage insurance. So they paid a one-time fee that I use some of the money from the state to pay for, so they don't actually have a mortgage insurance payment ever. Every one of my clients who had their closing costs included in the loan that they didn't pay for it out of pocket, every one of them ended up with no mortgage insurance monthly payments because we use some of the money from the state to buy out of the mortgage insurance. So they don't actually have a monthly payment for the mortgage insurance. It was really the best way to utilize the funds to help them get into a house with almost 20% down, because the mortgage insurance wasn't that expensive. and it made it so it was a one-time fee. We paid it off and it was done. So they didn't have that pain of what it was going to cost them extra just because they didn't put 20% down. So great question, Crystal. Please, gang, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We got another 30 minutes and a lot of that will be time for Q&A as well. All right. So the last one's a client who bought a home in Lodi. They were shopping for a home, putting 10% down. They were somewhere between $450,000 purchase price. And they were looking at, as a matter of fact, I think I have this wrong because it wasn't a 397 price. It was, the 397 was the loan amount. So the price of the home was approximately just under 500,000. So this client bought, they were looking at anywhere from 4 to 450 was really what their budget looked like. He had money from his 401k that he was going to use for his down payment. He was going to put a 10% down payment plus closing costs. What he did is he switched to this program. We were able to bump his price range from 450 to 500. So again, I inaccurately put the loan amount here instead of the purchase price. We bumped his price from 450 to 500. So he's able to get an increase of 10%. That's a huge difference when you're shopping for a home, depending on the market, but adding more than 10% to your price range, whether you're buying a $300,000 home and you get to bump by 30 grand, or a $600,000 home that you bump by 60 grand, 10% higher in price can be a game changer in what the quality of the home is, what the size of the home is, so many things that can help you to get the home that you're really looking for. Not only that, but he was able to save some of his money and keep it in his pocket. He was pulling money out of the 401k, and I said, you're going to pay taxes on that. You're going to have a penalty on that. So why do that? And I'm going to get to your story in just a second. So I see your question. I'll get to it a little more. This client in particular, he was able to only put 5% of his own money. Now, he didn't want to put zero down. He didn't want to just pay his own closing costs. He put 5% of his own money. So then we debated and said, well, do you still get 20% from the state? And that way you put a 25% down payment? And we decided the value wasn't very good for that. He would rather get 5% of his own money, get 15% from the state so that he has a 20% total down payment. But now he's only repaying appreciation on 15% of the sales price. So he has less money to pay back later. So it can make a huge difference in his repayment down the road. So he paid 5% down plus the closing costs. He only took 15% of the program funds. All right, so Anna asked a really valid question. And she says, John, all these success stories are great to hear. Do I know how much these buyers overpaid on the listing price? I'm scared of people overbidding as a negative consequence. So here's what I'll tell you. I don't have the statistics off the top of my head. I'll tell you that most of my, well, the $1,050,000 buyer in Los Angeles, that home was listed for $1 million. He offered 900. They said they had another offer that was at $1.25 million, I think $1,025,000. So he was offering under, somebody else came in over, and he ended up in a position where he ended up buying, he was in a negotiation with another person. So he paid $50,000 over what the list price was. But here's the deal. He didn't simply overpay. What you have to be careful about was, why is your competition looking to buy at the same time? And when this program first launched, the first weekend that it came, first of all, of my 9 buyers, 3 of them were in contract before the program launched, which is a very, very important thing that I'm going to talk to you guys about in a couple of minutes. But the other thing is, I heard so it launched on Monday, the 27th. That weekend, the first weekend of April, that's when I heard about a lot of the overbidding, because people were saying, oh my gosh, I want to make sure that I don't miss out. So I know a couple of them paid over asking price. It's a very valid question. And it's a bigger concern the second time around, and I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. You said you're also, due to overbidding, you're scared the appraisal will fail. That also is a very valid concern. And here's the deal. You have to cover the difference out of pocket, because the money from the state and the money from the full loan amount, that only adds up to the lesser of the purchase price or the appraised value. So you absolutely need to be aware. So Anna's continuing to say houses in Orange County are going 200 to 300,000 over the listing price. I see that. It's getting to be more and more of a concern, and it's one of my concerns going forward. The market wasn't as hot in March and April. It was hot, but it wasn't as hot as it is now. So it's part of what I'm going to get to in the end when I say, should you buy now instead of waiting? That's a big concern, and that is absolutely a big piece of it. So yeah, it's definitely something you need to be aware of. The market's getting hotter, and I'll explain that dynamic in a couple minutes. All right, so there's my success stories. Let's keep going here. Thank you, Anna, and everybody for those questions and comments, and everybody else. Stop being so quiet. Ask me more questions. I'm just kidding. Okay, so what were the rules the first time? Brief overview. By the way, at the end, you're going to get a QR code to a series of videos that I created back in March that has all of the rules the first time. So if you have a specific question about the rules that existed the first time, because the new rules are not out yet, you can scan that QR code, get to that list of videos and look through there. Almost all of the rules are discussed, all of the terms, all of the requirements are discussed in there. But let's go over generally. You had to be a first-time home buyer. A first-time home buyer, by Cal HAFA's definition, is you have not lived in a residence that you own any time in the last 3 years, or lived in a residence that your spouse owned. So there's a loophole. A lot of people said, oh, I'll buy a house and I'll be a first-time home buyer, but I won't put my spouse on there. And then a year from now, we can buy another house and put it in my spouse's name and not mine. And my spouse is a first-time home buyer. For this program, that loophole has been closed. So you cannot buy if you've lived in a home that you or your spouse has owned as your primary residence anytime in the last 3 years. No co-signers are allowed. By the way, I'll tell you which of these I think might change. No co-signers are allowed. You have to have a 680 credit score, and for low-income people, you could have a 660 credit score. It was a Fannie Mae conventional loan, and that I expect to stay the same. Now, conventional loans are two things. Conventional loans are either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. This program only uses Fannie Mae. Anna says, what if your parents gave you a home? My mom put my name on title, but I refuse to live with her. Okay. I could say so many things about living with family, but what I'll tell you is that was a smart move to not live with her, not for any other reason than the fact that technically you're still considered a first-time home buyer because you have not owned a home that you lived in. Here's the problem, Anna, and anybody else in this situation. We've got to prove you didn't live there. How do you prove you didn't live there? I have to prove where you did live. But what if you lived with a friend and you didn't pay rent? We might have a problem. What if some of your mail went to your mom's house? We're going to have a problem. Proving you didn't live somewhere is like proving you've never been married. Think about that. If I said, prove to me you're divorced. Yeah, here's my divorce decree. If I said, prove to me that you're married. Sure, here's my marriage certificate. If I said, prove to me you've never been married. What do you want? A birth certificate? Like, I don't know. I was born. That means that's the only other document I got. After that, I got nothing. You can't prove that you've never been married. You also have a hard time proving you've never lived there. We'd have to have concrete evidence you did live somewhere else. And really, your name has to be on the lease. Now, could we do it without your name being on the lease? Yeah, but it's going to get complicated because if anything, it all says that there's a question of whether you really live there or not. That could be a major issue. So you can prove it. Awesome. Perfect. All right. Owner occupied only. So you have to occupy within 60 days and you have to live there for a year. Many people ask me, John, can I use this for a rental property? The answer is no. You have to use it for owner occupied only. You can move out after a year. You don't have to repay it when you move out, but you have to move in. It has to be owner occupied. And you have to move in within 60 days and you have to stay for at least a year. You can combine up to 30% of your own money with 20% from the state. You could put 50% down. I had, as a matter of fact, one of my clients, the one that got away, I had a client that got approved or got into contract the night before the money ran out. Actually, the morning of the money running out. And that client said, hey, John, I'm ready. Let's lock in the money. We got it ready. We pressed the lock button. the system was very, very backlogged, and it took a couple hours to get a confirmation back that the money was locked because so many people were locking their loan that day. And this client missed it. We didn't get the lock before the money disappeared. And he was putting 20% of his own money. He was already going to do a 20% down payment. He was putting 20% of his own money plus 20% from the state. So he was only making payments on 60% of the purchase price. Now, the rules allowed for that. The problem I'm worried about is that's taking up money from this program for people that didn't need it. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute, is what I think is going to change and what I'm hearing might change. Now, I've also been told that I don't do enough of talking about bankruptcy and foreclosure and what are the rules for every program. So here I go. Fannie Mae requires, if you had a Chapter 7, it has to be 4 years old, and it is to the day of when we pull credit. So therefore, if you've had depending upon the day this is released and when we lock it for you, you have to be 4 years after your Chapter 7 or 2 years after your Chapter 13 in order to be able to qualify. And it has to be 7 years after a foreclosure. Now, there haven't been many foreclosures in the last 7 years, so I don't think this is going to be much of an issue. But the rules technically say if the home was included in the bankruptcy first and then foreclosed upon, we only care about the bankruptcy timing. So there's a little cool loophole there. But again, I don't think we're going to run into that very often. So let's talk about some of the details. How much money was there exactly the first time around? Well, the rules a year ago when this first was discussed, they said, hey, we got $500 million that we're going to put in the program this coming year, and we're going to put in double that, $1 billion every year after that. And then January of 2023, there was a budget shortfall. The governor said, oh my gosh, we don't have a surplus. We're losing money. And so I can't give you 500 million. I'm only going to give you 300 million. So they released 300 million on Monday, the 27th of March. At that moment, I already had 3 clients in contract. I reserved their money that morning. We had no problem. That Friday was Cesar Chavez holiday in California, so the state was closed. There were no locks. We had 4 days the first week. The second week, we start out, and it's what, April 3rd, Monday, April 3rd? No big deal. Money's still there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday after 3 o'clock, because CalHAFA, who manages the money, they shut down at 3 o'clock. Thursday afternoon at 3:30, they sent out an email saying, hey, we're running out of money. That money's going faster than we thought. We think there's enough money to last at the current pace. There's enough money to last until Tuesday of next week. But no matter what, we're shutting down the program on Wednesday. So even if we still have money left, we're done on Wednesday, but you got till Tuesday based on our current average locks per day. The next morning, Friday morning, they opened up at 8 a.m. for locks. I had 3 clients to lock. I pressed the button at 8:01 for my first client. At 8:20, I got confirmation. I pressed the button at 8:15 for my second client. At 10:45, I got confirmation. I pressed the button at 9 o'clock for my third client. And at 11:30, we heard the money was gone. So the system shut down that morning. It was so backlogged. There were so many people trying to lock that it slowed the servers down. And what normally takes about 5 minutes to get a confirmation, what at 8 o'clock that morning took 15 minutes for the first person that I pushed a button on, it was taking hours to process. If you didn't put in the lock before probably 8:45 Friday morning, the money was gone. All the people that had pressed the button between 8 and 8:45 used it up, and it just didn't get processed until 11:30 when they announced the money was gone. That's 4 business days the first week, 4 business days the second week, and the money was gone. Okay, remember that, because I'll talk in a couple of minutes about what I think is going to happen with the money the second time. That was about 2,500 families that we helped. The state pledged $1 billion a year for the next 10 years. So we're going to have $10.5 billion in there. But will they do it? Well, let's talk about that. They've made the announcement. We're getting $200 million. We had $300 million in March, and that money disappeared in 8 business days. We're now getting only 2/3 of that. We're getting $200 million instead of $300 million. Instead of helping an average of 2,500 families, there's only enough money for 1,650 families based on an average purchase price of $600,000, which means every family is getting $120,000 on average. That's it. 1,650 families. And we went through 2,500 families in 8 business days. And a whole bunch of that went away in the last day. It was a frenzy. Guess what the first day of the new program is going to look like? It's going to look exactly like the last day of the first release. That first day, we're going to see a bunch of people locking their loans first thing in the morning, not wanting to run out of money. I think the system's going to get backlogged. It's going to crash. I hope that the money lasts beyond that first day, but it might not. But here's a couple of things that we'll talk about in a minute that they're going to do different. So Cal Haffa made an announcement 2 weeks ago that said, we're going to make an announcement. They formed a committee to talk about forming a committee. That's what politicians do, isn't it? Sorry, I couldn't help it. So the fact is, they said, hey, we promise that we're going to give you a timeline sometime in the fall. Okay, so we don't have a lot of dates. Some people think that means that in the fall, they're going to tell us the exact date it's going to launch. They probably will, but they think that date's going to be in the fall. I'm not so convinced. Now we'll see. Part of me says I think it will happen that quickly, because what they have to do is get through the process of deciding what the rules are going to be. And that's the only thing they have to do. That's a really big deal. And I'll talk to you in a minute about what the things are I think they're going to, what I know they're discussing, and some of the things I think they might do. So really, this is the next question. Will the rules be the same? It is not likely. I think they're going to make some serious changes to a few rules to impact how the money was used. So let's talk about what some of the changes are that I think are coming. And specifically, some of these are things that I know they're talking about, this being the state Senate and a Senate subcommittee of the finance department, of the finance committee, is spearheading this. They're working with Cal Haffa and some outside nonprofit agencies. One of the things they're talking about is it's only allowed for people who are in contract after the release dates. Why does that matter? Because if we go back to the original timeline, March 27th is when it was released. I know of multiple families who were in contract that went into contract on March 10th with a close of escrow date of April 10th. But they found out about this program. It's a part where they were already putting their own down payment. Whatever amount they were putting down, they were already in escrow. They'd already been approved without this program, but they switched. They said, man, if I can get 20% money from the state and not have to make a payment on it, that would help my budget a lot. And so a portion of the money went to people who were going to buy anyway. It didn't help create first-time home buyers. It helped people who are already planning on buying, who were already pre-approved with a different program, who already had a contract accepted on a home. And they were able to transfer to this program and use the money, so that the rest of you couldn't. So it's one of the things I like that I hope they actually implement is a cutoff date. Now, be careful what you wish for, because one of my strategies is for you to write your contracts early and get in the contract before the program starts. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you can't beat them, join them. So if I'm right, well, first of all, right or wrong, if they put that rule in there, then we're not gonna be able to write contracts early. But if they don't put that rule in there, you're gonna wanna get in contract early once we know the timeline. Now, here's one that's kind of cool, kind of scary, and impossible to police. They're talking about wanting to make it generational, meaning they want to make sure that we're giving this to first-time home buyers who are the first generation of home buyers. In other words, that their parents didn't own a home. That's a great concept. Very altruistic, very cool thought. Yeah, Anna said she's in trouble then. I don't know, Anna, I can't see this one actually being implemented. It's impossible to track because I'd have to get, I don't know if I do a 23andMe on everybody to figure out who your parents are in order to confirm whether your parents in fact owned a home or not. I don't think that's going to happen, but these are the types of things they're thinking about. The goal is to create home ownership opportunities for those that couldn't have it. Theoretically, if you're a first generation homeowner, you had less chance of becoming a homeowner than the person whose parents were homeowners. I can understand that premise. So I think this is a decent concept. It's impossible for them to track. It's impossible for them to implement. I cannot see this truly being a rule. Yeah, so the bottom line is generational, I'm not sure. Now, this one I kind of like. This one, how about we make it needs-based? How about that we don't let somebody come up with their 30% of their own money? Now, you could take this one step further. You could say you can't have more than a certain dollar amount left over. That would really help people who need the money. So this would help. I don't know if they're going to go that far. I don't know if they're going to implement any of this. But look, if somebody has 30% of their own money and they're taking 20% from the state, so you're buying $1 million home and you have $300,000 for down payment. So you could buy the house using a $700,000 loan. And that's a perfectly fine loan, borrowing 70% of the purchase price. But, well, why not use other people's money? Why not put total of 50% down and only make payments on $500,000, 300 of the down payment's my money, 200 from the state. That's a great concept, because now you're only making payments on $500,000 of that $1 million home. You didn't need the help. You had a bunch of money for the down payment. So I like the idea of at least saying, look, you can't put more than a certain amount of money out of your own pocket on top of this money. That'll stop some of those people from using it. Maybe they say, hey, if you have 20% or more of your own money, you can't get this at all. I'm not opposed to that either. I'm not setting the rules. I wish they called me into the room so I could help them, but I'm not. But I'll tell you that this is one that I think is important, that we limit it to people that actually need the help. And if somebody has the money for the down payment and they're trying to put extra money from this program on top of their own, they didn't really need the help. And if you're one of those people, I'm not saying that you don't deserve help, but there's only so much money going around. Okay, let's talk about the next one. How about limiting the amount of funds any one person can access? I'm a huge proponent of this. My client, who bought the house in Pacifica that was a $1.22 million home, he said to himself, you know, John, I got a lot of money from the state. I mean, what is it? 20% of 1.225. So let's do quick math here, John. 1,225 times 0.2. He got $245,000. One person. $245,000 to one person. His money could have been used to help 3 people buy $400,000 homes. But instead, 3 people couldn't buy $400,000 homes. Instead, he got to buy his $1.225 million home. He followed the rules. I followed the rules. I'm going to take every advantage of every rule I can to help you out and help all of my clients out. But man, 2 more families could have been helped. So I think we should limit it. I personally think we should limit it to no more than $100,000 per person. So that means if you're buying a $500,000 home, you get 20%. You buy $1 million home, you only get $100,000. So the lower priced homes, you only get 20%. You buy a $300,000 home, you get 60 grand. You buy a $400,000 home, you get 80. $500,000 home, you get 100. $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 home, you only get 100. 100 grand for a down payment is a lot of money. And if every single person was limited to $100,000, this would help significantly more people that are currently blocked from being homeowners. I think it's critical they put a limit. Now, again, my client that bought those $1 million homes, they wouldn't have gotten the same deal they got. They both could have still bought homes. They might have had to buy a little bit lower priced home, but they both could have still got homes. And so I think that's a key thing they need to look at changing. And the final thing that I've heard them talking about is reducing the income limits. You could make a lot of money. Okay. My client in Pacifica, in the San Francisco Bay Area, you could make $300,000 a year and still qualify for this down payment assistance program. That's ludicrous. That person that makes $300,000 a year, I'm sorry, but save up for your own down payment. Like there's the fact of the matter is, we all struggle. If you're in a market, you're making $300,000, you're living in the Bay Area, you're paying a huge amount of money in rent. I get it. So we just have to figure out how we don't put all our eggs in a few baskets. And the income limits, I don't think they should change the income limits, because if they simply decrease how much money each person can get, I don't care if you make $300,000, you still can't get more than 100 grand of the pie. So I think that's more important than reducing the income limits. All right, so let's talk about what are the income limits. So first of all, you can scan this QR code. These are the old rules. I don't know if they're going to change the income limits, but you can scan the QR code or go to californiadreamforall.info/max income, and you'll see the numbers by county. But it was up to $300,000 in the highest cost counties. And even in the lowest price counties in the state, you could make up to $159,000 and qualify. Now, there's another rule that said if you make under 80% of the area median income, you get a little better deal. Lower FICO score required, you don't have to pay back as much money, some pretty cool little perks. Those were nice to have things, but the critical thing that I'm worried about is I'm worried they're going to change the income limit to these numbers. If they do that, we're sunk. And I don't mean sunk, I mean the spirit of the program is gone, because it's going to help so few people buy homes in so few markets. In this is up to 120 grand. So somebody in the San Francisco Bay Area couldn't make more than 120 grand and fall under this 80% area median income. That would make it almost impossible to use this program. So could it be used? Yes, it's going to be few and far between. So I hope they don't go this far. Honestly, I hope they don't change the income limits at all. There's a little room to tweak it on the top end. But the key, if anybody's listening from the state Senate's office, or if Cal Haffa, please call me. I'll talk to you about it. I'll help guide you on how to do it. But worry more about how much money you give each person and worry less about what the income limit is. So let's talk about how to prepare. What do you need to do to prepare for the Dream for All program's relaunch? So the first thing is you better make sure your credit scores are in line. It is the #1 frustration of my buyers in the first round. They would come to me and they said, John, I'm ready to buy. Dream for All program is going to be launched next week. Let's go. I pulled their credit and it was lower than what they thought. And they said, John, I don't get it. My Credit Karma says I'm at 685. Credit Karma uses a different model than mortgage companies do. Well, no, John, I use the FICO model. It doesn't matter. It's different than mortgage companies. There's only 2 ways to get your real credit score, your mortgage credit score. myfico.com. If you go to myfico.com, you have to sign up, you have to pay money. It's not free. And myfico.com gives you the option of which score do you want, and you click on the mortgage score and you can get your mortgage credit report. The other way is you get it from me. I don't charge anything. I don't bite. I will get you your credit score by pulling a soft credit report. It isn't even counting as a hard inquiry. Okay, I'll do a soft credit report for you and tell you what your score is, and I can run it through Fannie Mae's system to see if it's good enough or if there's any red flags. Because some of my clients, they were good, they had high enough credit, but there were some red flags, some collections, some old negatives, a house payment that had a late payment that wasn't theirs, and they disputed it, but it's still on there. So it became a red flag and they didn't qualify for a Fannie Mae conventional loan. And you must be doing Fannie Mae conventional loans for this program. So don't get stuck with your credit score not being good enough. You need to let me pull your soft credit. Now you need to save up your earnest money deposit, your appraisal and your inspection costs. Now, if done right, I can give you every penny of that money back. Not the inspections, but the appraisal and the earnest money, I can give you every penny back. But you have to be able to front the money. So you're talking about anywhere from about $500 or $600 for the appraisal, a few $1,000s to up to 1%, 2% of the purchase price for the earnest money deposit. And then your inspections could be another $1,000 as well. So make sure you've got some money saved up for those things that you need up front. Know your numbers. Run your numbers with me to know what do you qualify for based on today's interest rates and what does that mean in a price range. Know your budget. When we sit down together, whether it's on the phone, via Zoom, or in person in my Lodi or my Roseville offices, we will go through with you and we will talk through your budget. And we're going to talk about what are you comfortable paying per month and what will I let you spend per month. It's critical we have those two numbers and we compare them side by side. Okay, know your price range, because as Anna has been talking about in chat earlier, we're worried prices are going up. Watch the market, know where prices are at. By all means, pick a realtor. There's some great realtors on this webinar right now. I can see their names. I'm not going to call you out. Please don't post your phone number in chat. But there's some amazing realtors that are educating themselves. Also, don't post your email address for that matter. But there's some amazing realtors that are educating themselves and getting ahead of the curve. If you need a recommendation to a realtor that understands this program and has your best interest at heart, call me. I will help you find an amazing realtor who's going to guide you through this process. The challenge is some realtors are kind of like, hey, if you're not ready to buy now, I don't want to talk to you. Here's the deal with a realtor. They're all jerks. Just kidding, really, just kidding. No, here's the deal with a realtor. They don't get paid to show you houses. Their job is to take great care of you, to serve your needs, and they get paid when you buy a house. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to show you houses, but what it means is don't waste their time. And some of them are unwilling to invest time. Find a realtor willing to invest time in you, that will sit down with you and talk about what your needs are. Find out what communities you're thinking about. Go show you a couple of homes in those communities so that you know what it's going to take. I've got right now 10 buyers who are already pre-approved that are only waiting for Dream for All to come back. That's the only way they're buying. And so their realtors are already searching for them and dripping on them every time that houses come out in that neighborhood and that price range, so they can keep an eye on what the market looks like, because that way they're ready to act fast. That's the key. So the key is we're going to get a timeline in in the fall. When's the fall? I don't know when fall is. So sometime in the fall, my kids go back to school in a week and a half. Does that mean that it's almost fall? It's not, obviously. But the fact of the matter is that in the fall, they're going to give us a timeline. Last time they launched this, they gave a 3.5 week notice of when the money was going to be released. I think they'll do the same thing. Whether they're going to give that date now or in the fall, they say, hey, our timeline is it's somewhere in January, we're going to release the money. And then they'll give us a 3 or 4 week lead time of when they release the money. But as soon as we know the money is available, you got to be ready to act. If you're going to move forward with this program, you got to be ready to act fast, because I think the money's going to run out in the first week. There's less money than the first time, and the first time ran out in 8 business days. I think the money's going to run out in less than 5 business days. I think that first day is going to be a big one. And I think a lot of the money is going to disappear the first day. I think you only have one weekend to compete, and that's the weekend right before the money is available. Now, all that's predicated on, do they set a start date when the file can go in, when the escrow contract timeframe can start. So there's a lot of unknowns here, but when I think strategy, and I'm talking specifically to the realtors on this call, we have to figure out how we make our offers stand out and the timing of it, because that is going to be the busiest. It's going to be Thanksgiving weekend to shopping is that weekend to home buying. It is everybody and their sisters going to be out looking for homes that weekend. If I had a home to sell, I might hold off on selling that home once I know that the Dream for All money is coming. Once I know, if I was a listing agent, once I know the date. Crystal's asking about the class. The class is literally my next slide. Yep, it is. Okay, I'm going to go back though. Hold on. Let's go back. There we go. All right, so Crystal's asking about the class. That was my next slide. So way to jump ahead, Crystal. Just kidding. Okay, so if I had a home to sell and I had just found out, my realtor had just found out the Dream for All was being released 3 weekends from now, I'd be kind of upset if my realtor allowed me to list my home now and get in a contract before that weekend. As a seller, as a listing agent, I think there's something to be said about holding your inventory until that weekend. Once we know the dates, holding your inventory until that weekend might net you a higher price. Just to Anna's point about prices going up and people overpaying, I heard many, many, many stories of people overpaying. As a matter of fact, my buyer who didn't buy, the one that got away, he paid $60,000. This was a $600,000 home. He paid, as a matter of fact, he paid $80,000 over the list price to win the offer. And his agent said he didn't care because he was getting 20% from the state. And I'm thinking, yeah, but he was only getting $140,000 from the state. And he paid 80 of that 140 in extra price on the house in order to win. So just be aware, if you're waiting for this program, that's the type of competition you're going to be dealing with. The people that are writing offers for $200,000 or $300,000 above, Anna, that's going to be a bigger net. That's going to be a bigger amount people are writing offers over this upcoming, whatever this weekend launches. And it has me very, very concerned for people who are waiting for, hey, I want to take advantage of this program. Some of you will, a lot of you won't be able to. So we'll talk in a minute about what the options are to do something now. But before I do that, let me read Crystal's mind. Crystal wanted to talk about homeowner education. So this QR code takes you to a page that I created that talks about homeowner education. This was one of the biggest challenges we dealt with the first time, is everybody trying to get education at the same time. Go get your education now. There are more than enough companies. I have one of my clients who needed this education for a different purpose. He had actually taken the class back in April, but he never did the one-on-one, the 1 hour consultation at the end, because that's what took the extra time. The 7 hours online didn't take 7 hours. It doesn't take anywhere near 7 hours. It was really, really quick, but you have to do a 1 hour consultation at the end with a live body. And that was what was backlogged. And that was backlogged for months. They've worked through the backlog. My client called last week. They got a date on August 2nd. So if you're thinking about doing it, these are good for a year. So it will be good for the upcoming version. It's only $100 and it's good for a year. There's a second type of appreciation. It's online only. You don't need to worry about that one. Second type of education. And that's the education on how the appreciation works. Okay. So when you look at the education, focus on the first time home buyer course. It costs you $100. It's good for a year. Did I mention it's good for a year? It's good for a year. All right. For details and links, go to californiadreamforall.info/education, which really just, again, this QR code has been up here for a long time and you all really wanted to, like, you were staring at it, you were pulling your phone out, you were thinking maybe I should click it. You should have clicked it, because if you didn't click it, it's too late. All right, so should I just buy now? Like, John, you just spent an hour and 1 minute telling me all the reasons about this program and you kind of talked me out of it. Okay, that's not the worst thing in the world. If I talked you out of it, then maybe it's because you should do something now. Because one of the things I heard a lot, not a lot, I heard a little, but I was more afraid of, is buyer's remorse. Because you didn't have the time to look around. You settled on a home because you had no time. Guess what? It's going to be worse on the next version, because you're literally likely to have one weekend to get the property you want. And is the property you want going to be available that weekend? Probably not. So you're going to have to settle for whatever's on the market. So by buying now, you have time to look around and not settle. Not a lot. There's a lot of competition out there, but it's not as bad as what it's going to be once the money is released. I have 6 different ways to buy with 0 down. This is only one of them. Now, this is the best. This is going to have the lowest monthly payment, but it also costs you the most because you have shared appreciation. So the Dream for All program, one of 6 programs I have. The other 5, no shared appreciation. You just pay interest, and sometimes you pay no interest. Sometimes it's a grant that you don't ever have to pay back. Okay, you don't want to pay it back. Don't pay it back. Just kidding. Okay, there's lots of different options. So don't worry about this being the only way to buy a home with 0 down. At some point in the future, this program will become mainstream. Okay, it's kind of like Cabbage Patch dolls. Let's think back. I'm dating myself now. My wife wouldn't appreciate it. She says I can't date anybody, but she doesn't mind when I date myself. Anyway, so you have, sorry, hopefully that was funny. You have Cabbage Patch dolls that were a big deal. You couldn't get a Cabbage Patch doll if your life depended on it, until nobody really cared and nobody wanted them, and there were a whole bunch of Cabbage Patch dolls. You couldn't get, what couldn't you get during the pandemic? Toilet paper, obviously. Hello, toilet paper. You couldn't get toilet paper. Now you can, and it isn't much of a big deal. But back then it was a really, really big deal. So just understand, super scarce right now. I think if the state continues to fund this annually in about 6 years, this will have a lot more money because people will be refinancing and paying off the balance, and that money will go back in. So this is not a program that's always going to feel this way, but right now for the next few years, it is. And so you have to decide, do I want to do that, or should I just buy now? By the way, did I mention less competition? I'm pretty sure there's going to be a whole lot less competition if you buy now. So something to think about is, how badly do you want to be competing? Because maybe you have extra money that you can use to cover the appraisal gap. But if you don't, you're in trouble, because this program is not going to cover the appraisal gap for you. All right, so I'm ready to wrap up. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them into chat right now, because I am 4 minutes over time and I want to get this wrapped up and get upstairs to my wife and children. So if you're ready to make your dream a reality, I have 2 barcodes for you. 2, not two, but 2. So the first one is the one on the left. That's to start the process. There is no commitment. You're not paying any money. We're going to do a soft credit report. We're going to ask you to send me over paycheck stubs and W-2s, maybe tax returns, depending upon how your income comes in, and a bank statement or two. Really, really, really simple. And you scan that QR code on the left, you take it to a mobile app, you download it onto your phone. It's got an amazing calculator that can allow you to calculate monthly payments. Really, really cool, very valuable. It'll serve as your scanner to scan and upload documents into my portal. Very, very secure. The QR code on the right will take you to my Dream for All YouTube channel. It'll actually take you to a specific playlist that talks about the rules from version 1. So I mentioned earlier that if you want to know more about how, and I'll get to your question in just a second. If you want to know more about how the program works, we don't know anything about the new rules, but I know everything about the old rules. And that's a good place to start, is this QR code on the right, because it's going to give you anywhere from 30-second to 2-minute videos. And there's a list of, I think, 40 videos that are 30 seconds to 2 minutes long that pretty much cover everything you would want to know about the program. So watch through that, pick and choose which videos you like, watch all the videos, like them, share them, subscribe, click the notification bell. My 11-year-old will be happy I said all the things I'm supposed to say about getting you to follow me on YouTube. So the bottom line is, gang, the process, and part of what Anna said. So Anna and I have talked before. She mentioned that in chat. And she wants to know when we should talk again. So Anna, I'm going to speak to everybody else, and then I'm going to speak to Anna. So for everybody, if you have not talked to me about doing a loan or what you qualify for, you need to talk with me now. Don't wait until the fall when we have more information. You need to talk to me now, because if there's something about your situation that is going to prevent you from qualifying, we want as much time as possible to work on it. There are things that will surprise you that will create an issue, and I want to give you time to work through those issues. So the sooner you contact me, you can use the QR code on the left and start the application process. My team will reach out and follow up, and they will schedule an appointment for us to either meet in person or on Zoom to talk through all of your options. If you've already met with me, which I know I see 4 or 5 names on here, people who have already met with me the first time around, if you qualified back then, and you don't have specific questions you want to ask, and by the way, I don't have a lot of specific answers, but if you don't have specific questions, then there's no need for us to meet again right now. Keep watching my stuff, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we will let you know once we get the announcement from Cal HEFA on the timeline. Once we know we're closer, we want to update your pre-approval. Now, that's good for anybody that has met with me previously or is about to meet with me in the next couple of weeks. We're going to have another conversation once we have the timeline. That conversation is not just going to be you and I, okay? It's going to be you, me, and your real estate agent. So just like Crystal said, we have to work as a team. And as a team, we're going to be able to best serve your needs. And so if you have a realtor, great. You're going to bring them to that meeting with me that we're going to have once we get a timeline. If you don't have a realtor, I can help you find one. I can pick from one of the amazing realtors that I have, and we're going to have a 3-way meeting between me, you, and your real estate agent. That's a strategy session. It is going to take my 22 years of experience, all of your realtors' experience, and a whole big dusting of pixie dust luck to make this work. And it is not going to work if we're not all on the same page and having a strategy conversation. So if you've never talked to me, you need to talk with me now. We need to do the soft credit. It does not cost you anything. It does not have a ding on your credit report, but we need to take a look at your income. We need to take a look at your credits, and we need to know that you're in good shape. And then the next step after that is we have a joint meeting with your real estate agent where we talk strategy. We make sure you're shopping in the right price range, that you know what strategies are going to take to get offers accepted in your neighborhood. You're prepared to release contingencies. I did a whole video last Friday. So on both of my YouTube channels, I've got a video that talks about strategies to get your offer accepted in a challenging market, in a competitive market. And there's a lot of things we have to do. Now, the problem is not all of those things can be done in conjunction with the Dream for All program. But if you go to either of my YouTube channels, either John Loan King or California Dream for All, subscribe to those channels and you will see that video from last Friday. Really, really good information about how you can implement strategies to get your offer accepted in a competitive market. But this program is one that is going to create an uber competitive market for a super short period of time. Raina asked about sending the recording. Absolutely. It's only $150 per recording. Just kidding. Venmo me. The QR code in the middle is my Venmo. I'm just kidding. So it'll be on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So either one of my YouTube channels, John Lone King. So you go to YouTube, search out John Lone King, or California Dream for All, which this QR code, by the way, I'll show you the cool. This one is another one that just takes you straight to that YouTube channel. So this is the actually, I think this takes you to the same video series. Anyway, bottom line is, yes, it'll be worth the money. Thank you, Raina. Bottom line, gang, I am done. If you have any questions, please enter them into chat. You can go to CaliforniaDreamForAll.info to get more updates. I think I'm giving you enough places to go. Liliana said, John, would this program take rent payment as a credit line if you don't have enough trade lines? No, it does not. So Fannie Mae does. That's a great question, Liliana. Fannie Mae does not take rent as a trade line if you don't have enough trade lines. Actually, what's funny is they actually kind of do. What has to happen though is that it has to show on your bank statements, and we have to order your bank statements directly from your bank and link them into my system. And then Fannie Mae's system gives some credit to recurring payments that they can see, or rent payments that match the amount of rent that we put on the loan application. So there is a way to do it, but that's why we have to pull credit now, run it through and see. Another tip, authorized credit accounts. So you can get a family member to add you as an authorized user to their credit card. You inherit their entire credit history. So if you don't have enough trade lines, that's a great way to inherit somebody else's credit history, and you immediately get the number of trade lines that you want. All right, gang, I don't see any other questions. I'm going to chit chat for 30 more seconds here to fill in the blanks in case anybody has questions. So feel free to post them in. Angelique, the QR code, Unite, what the heck? Well, that sucks. Don't do that. So don't apply at United Wholesale Mortgage. Whatever one Angelique said, one of my QR codes took her to, is it this one on this page right now or the one on the 2 pages ago? Now I got to look at it myself. Hold on. Let's see here. All right. Well, either way, go to johnloneking.com, 2 pages above. So this one right here. So don't use that one. That is crazy. I tested the other QR code today and it worked. And okay. Well, the QR code on the left actually takes you to a form to fill in, to just an inquiry form. Anyway, so I don't know why it took, I don't know what's up with that one. Anyway, reach out to me directly, johnloneking.com. So go to email me or go to johnloneking.com. Easiest thing. Sorry about that with the bad QR code. Anybody else doesn't look like I have any questions, so I will let you all go. Have a wonderful evening and please reach out. I would love the opportunity to take great care of all of you. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.